The stars were dying. Commander Vextar stood on the bridge of his warship, watching another coalition fleet burn in the cold darkness of space. The enemy ships moved like a swarm of angry insects, their red hulls gleaming under the light of distant suns. They called themselves the Zephyrian Empire, and they were winning the war. Vextar was an Altarian, a race that looked like giant horses but walked on two legs. His people were known across the galaxy for being smart in battle. They could plan wars better than anyone else. But even the smartest plans meant nothing when the enemy had 10 ships for every one of yours. "Sir, we lost another carrier," reported his second officer, her voice shaking. The young Altarian had joined the Navy only 3 years ago, back when they thought this war would be over quickly. Now she watched friends die every day. "How many ships did we lose today?" Vextar asked, though he already knew the answer would be bad. 47, sir. The Zephyrians lost 12. Vextar closed his eyes. 47 ships meant thousands of lives. Good soldiers from 7 different worlds, all gone, because they could not match the enemy's strength. The Galactic Defense Coalition was supposed to be the most powerful force in known space. 7 races working together, sharing their best technology and their smartest minds. Yet they were losing. The coalition had been fighting the Zephyrians for 3 long years. At first, everyone thought it would be easy. The Zephyrians were just another race that wanted to take over their neighbors. The galaxy had seen wars like this before. But the Zephyrians were different. They were not just strong, they were smart, in ways that made them almost impossible to beat. The Zephyrians could link their minds together during battle. When one ship captain thought of a plan, every other captain knew it instantly. They moved like parts of the same giant creature, never making mistakes, never getting confused. Their fleets danced through space like schools of fish, turning and attacking as one perfect unit. The coalition tried everything. The horse-like Altarians used their best war plans. The bug-like Klaxons brought their own mind-linking technology. The crystal people called Resonance shared their power to control energy. The warrior race called Drakmari threw their strongest fighters into every battle. The snake-like Vortons used their speed to hit and run. The floating jellyfish creatures called Ethereals tried to confuse the enemy with tricks and lies. Even the rock people called Granite Lords brought their biggest, strongest ships. Nothing worked. "Sir," the communications officer called out. "Admiral, Kethel wants to speak with all fleet commanders." Vextar nodded. Admiral Kethel was the leader of all coalition forces, a wise old Altarian who had won more battles than anyone else alive. If anyone could find a way to win this war, it would be him. The screen flickered to life, showing Admiral Kethel's tired face. Behind him, Vextar could see the bridge of the coalition flagship, bustling with officers from different races all working together. It should have been a symbol of hope. Instead, it felt like watching the last light before darkness. "Fellow commanders," Admiral Kethel began, his voice heavy with sadness. "Today we lost the Kepler system. Tomorrow the Zephyrians will attack the core worlds. We are running out of time, space, and hope." Other fleet commanders appeared on screen, their faces showing the same defeat Vextar felt in his heart. Commander's Rix of the Klaxons buzzed nervously, her insect-like features twitching. Captain Borak of the Drakmari growled low in his throat, his fangs showing. Even the calm, ethereal Admiral Whisperwind seemed to flicker with worry. "What are your orders, Admiral?" asked Commander Rix. Admiral Kethel was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke words that surprised everyone. "We are going to ask for help." "From who?" Captain Borak demanded. "Every major race in the galaxy is already fighting with us, or has been conquered by the Zephyrians." "Not every race," Admiral Kethel said quietly. There is one world we have not contacted, a small planet on the outer edge of the galaxy. The species there is young, primitive. Most of our scientists think they are not worth noticing. Vexstar felt his heart sink. Was their great admiral really suggesting they ask babies to help fight their war? With respect, sir, Vexstar said carefully, what could a primitive race do that we cannot? Admiral Kethel smiled for the first time in months. Maybe nothing. But my grandmother used to tell me an old saying, the smallest stone can start the biggest avalanche. These humans, as they call themselves, might see something we cannot. They might think of something we have not tried. Humans? Commander. Zrix buzzed the word like it tasted strange. What do we know about them? Very little, admitted the Admiral. They have only just learned to travel between stars. Their fastest ships would take years to cross distances we cover in days. They fight wars with chemical explosives and metal bullets. By our standards, they are still children playing with sticks. Then why ask them? Captain Borak growled. Admiral. Kethel looked at each commander on the screen. Because children sometimes see answers that adults miss. Because people who do not know the rules sometimes find new ways to play the game. And because we have tried everything else. The decision was not easy. Many commanders thought it was a waste of time. Others worried that involving such a weak race would only give the Zephyrians more targets. But in the end, they all agreed. When you are drowning, you grab any rope, even if it looks too thin to hold you. The message was sent across the galaxy to the small blue planet called Earth. It traveled through space at the speed of light, carrying the hopes of billions of beings who had run out of other options. The message was simple and direct. Your galaxy is in danger. A great evil threatens to destroy all 3 worlds. We have fought them for 3 years and are losing. Will you help us? On Earth, the message arrived during what the humans called morning in a place called Washington. President Lyndon Morrison was drinking coffee and reading reports when every communication device on the planet began showing the same impossible message. At first, people thought it was a joke or a movie advertisement. But as scientists confirmed that the signal came from deep space, using technology far beyond anything humans had ever seen, the truth became clear. They were not alone in the universe. And the universe needed their help. President Morrison called an emergency meeting with leaders from every nation on Earth. For the first time in human history, old enemies sat at the same table with a common purpose. The President of Russia sat next to the Prime Minister of Britain. The leader of China spoke with the Chancellor of Germany. Even countries that had been fighting each other stopped their wars to discuss this bigger threat. What do we know about these aliens? Asked General Paul Carter, the head of Earth's military forces. Dr. Amy Rodriguez, Earth's top space scientist, pulled up images on the big screen. Based on their message, we are looking at a war between multiple alien races. The good guys are losing badly. They want our help, but honestly, I do not understand why. Our most advanced spaceship is barely faster than theirs were 1,000 years ago. Maybe that is exactly why they need us, said President Morrison quietly. Maybe they need someone who thinks differently. The debate went on for hours. Some leaders argued that Earth was not ready for an interstellar war. Others worried that getting involved would make Earth a target. But in the end, the decision was simple. If evil was threatening the galaxy, good people had to stand up and fight, no matter how small or weak they were. 3 days after receiving the message, Earth sent its reply. We will help. Our fleet will leave in 1 week. Across the galaxy, Admiral Kethel received the message and smiled. He did not know if the humans could really help win the war. But for the first time in months, he felt something he had almost forgotten, not hope. The alien races expected humans to spend months getting ready for war. They thought Earth would need time to build new spaceships and train soldiers. What they got instead was a message that arrived just 3 days later. Human fleet departing. In 1 week. Admiral Kethel stared at the message on his screen. He called his science officer, Dr. Vrental, to his office immediately. "Doctor, is this translation correct?" Admiral Kethel asked. "The humans say they will be ready to fight in 1 week?" Dr. Vrental checked his equipment twice. "Yes, Admiral. The message is clear, but I do not understand how this is possible. Our scouts report that humans have fewer than 200 space-capable ships in their entire fleet. Most are small research vessels or cargo haulers. Maybe they are not ready and just want to help anyway," the Admiral said. He had seen many brave races throw themselves into hopeless battles. Send a message back. Tell them to take their time. Tell them to build proper warships first. But Earth's reply came back even faster. "Thank you for concern. We work better. Under pressure. See you at the battle." What the aliens did not understand was how humans thought about problems. Other races spent years planning every detail before taking action. Humans did the opposite. They started moving first and figured out the details along the way. Captain Jake Sullivan had been flying cargo ships between Earth and Mars for 10 years. He hauled mining equipment, food supplies, and passengers. His ship, the Liberty Bell, was not built for war. It was built to carry things from one place to another. But when the government asked for volunteers to fight aliens, Jake signed up, without thinking twice. "Are you crazy?" His wife Kelly asked him over the video call. "You fly a cargo ship, not a battleship." Jake grinned at her from his captain's chair. "Honey, I've been flying through asteroid fields and solar storms for 10 years. How hard can it be to fight some overgrown lizards?" Kelly shook her head, but she was smiling too. She knew her husband well enough to know he would go anyway. "Just promise me you'll come home." "I promise," Jake said. "Besides, they're giving us weapons. Big ones." All across Earth's solar system, the same scene was playing out. The government was taking every ship that could fly and turning it into a warship. Cargo haulers got missile launchers bolted to their sides. Research ships had their labs removed and gun turrets installed. Even the International Space Station was loaded with nuclear weapons and fitted with engines. Dr. Amy Rodriguez found herself in charge of a converted science vessel called Darwin's Dream. She was a physicist, not a soldier, but the military needed people who understood alien technology. Her job was to study the enemy and find their weak points. "This is insane," said her assistant, Dr. Martin Cross, as he watched workers install weapons on their peaceful research ship. "We're scientists, not warriors." "Sometimes being a scientist is the best way to be a warrior," Amy replied. She was studying video footage of Zephyrian battles that the aliens had sent to Earth. "Look at this, Martin. See how they move?" Martin watched the screen, showing hundreds of alien ships moving in perfect formation. "They're very organized, very precise." "Exactly," Amy said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. "They're too organized. Look at this battle from last month. The Zephyrians knew exactly what the coalition would do before they did it. Their ships were already in position to counter every move. So the Zephyrians can predict their enemies?" "Not predict," Amy corrected. "They study. They learn patterns. Every race in the galaxy has been fighting wars the same way for thousands of years. The Zephyrians have studied all those patterns and know how to beat them." Martin nodded slowly. "But what if someone fought differently? What if someone did things that had never been done before? Then the Zephyrians would not know how to respond." Amy finished. "Martin, I think we might actually have a chance." While the scientists worked on understanding the enemy, the military was having their own problems. General Paul Carter stood in the Pentagon war room, surrounded by maps and computer screens showing Earth's tiny fleet. "Sir, we have a total of 197 ships," reported Colonel Lisa Park. "Most are cargo vessels with missile pods strapped on. We have 12 actual military ships, but they were built for fighting other humans, not aliens." "What about weapons?" General Carter asked. "We're using everything we have. Nuclear missiles, railguns, laser cannons, even some experimental weapons that have never been tested in combat. The problem is not firepower, sir. The problem is that we have no idea how to use it against an enemy that has never been beaten." General Carter looked at the list of volunteer ship captains. There were cargo pilots like Jake Sullivan, scientists, like Amy Rodriguez, military officers, and even some civilians who had learned to fly in computer games. It was not exactly the fleet he would have chosen to save the galaxy. "Sir, maybe we should wait," suggested Colonel Park. "Give us 6 months to build proper warships and train proper crews." "No," General Carter said firmly. "If we wait 6 months, the war might be over. The aliens asked for help now, not later. We go with what we have." The week of preparation was unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Every shipyard worked day and night. Weapons were built and installed faster than anyone thought possible. But the most important work was happening in the minds of the human crews. Captain Jake Sullivan spent his time talking to other captains, sharing ideas about how to fight an enemy they had never seen. "Listen," he told a group of volunteers. "We're not going to win this war by being better soldiers than the aliens. They've been fighting longer than humans have existed. We're going to win by being different." "Different how?" asked Captain Tony Martinez, who used to run garbage collection. "Ships around Earth's orbit. Think about it," Jake said. "Every alien race fights the same way their ancestors did. They have traditions, rules, proper procedures. We don't have any of that. We can make it up as we go." Lieutenant Kelly Barnes, who had volunteered to be Jake's communications officer, raised her hand. "But won't that make us unpredictable to our own allies too?" Jake smiled. "Maybe, but I'd rather confuse everyone than let the bad guys win." While the adults planned and worried, something unexpected was happening on Earth. 8-year-old Bobby Chun was playing his favorite video game, Space Battle Commander, when he noticed something strange. In the game, computer enemies always attacked in formations, just like real armies. But Bobby had discovered that if he scattered his ships randomly and had them attack from all different directions at once, the computer got confused and made mistakes. "Dad, look at this," Bobby called to his father, who was working on military strategy reports. "When I fight like this, the computer can't figure out what I'm doing." Bobby's father, Dr. Richard Chun, was a military analyst helping plan the space battle. He looked at his son's game and saw something that made his eyes widen. "Bobby, can you show me that again?" The boy demonstrated his chaotic fighting style, with his game ships attacking from every direction with no pattern or plan. The computer enemy, programmed to counter organized attacks, kept making wrong moves trying to respond to attacks that made no sense. "Son, I think you just helped us figure out how to win this war," Dr. Chun said, already reaching for his phone. To call General Carter. As the week ended, Earth's small fleet gathered in space around the moon. 197 ships of all shapes and sizes, carrying weapons they had barely learned to use, crewed by people who had never fought an alien before. It was not impressive by galactic standards, but it was ready. Admiral Kethel received the final message from Earth, just as the human fleet disappeared into hyperspace. "Thank you for trusting us. Time to show these lizards how humans fight." For the first time in years, Admiral Kethel laughed out loud. The Battle of Kepler Station was supposed to be the last fight of the war. Admiral Kethel knew it, his officers knew it, and worst of all, The enemy knew it. 2,50,000 Zephyrian ships hung in space like a red cloud of death. Their hulls gleamed under the light of Kepler's twin suns, and their weapons charged with energy that could melt planets. Across from them, 30,000 coalition ships formed their battle lines. Looking brave but feeling hopeless, Admiral Keffel stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the enemy fleet through the main screen. 6 hours of fighting had left both sides bloody and tired, but the Zephyrians were winning. They always won. "Sir, we have lost another squadron," reported his tactical officer, Commander Zrix. The bug-like Klaxon's voice buzzed with exhaustion. "The Drakmari heavy cruisers are falling back. Captain Borak requests permission to retreat." "Denied," Admiral Kethel said quietly. "If we retreat now, they will chase us to every world in the Coalition. Better to make our stand here." "Commander." Zrix's insect eyes dimmed with sadness. She had served under Admiral Kethel for 15 years. She had never seen him give up before, but she could hear the defeat in his voice. The Zephyrian fleet moved like a single living creature. When one ship turned, they all turned. When one group attacked, the others supported it perfectly. There, Commander, Fleet Admiral Scalax, had never lost a battle. His ships had conquered 47 star systems without a single defeat. "Admiral Kethel," came a voice over the communications channel. It was Admiral Skylax himself, speaking in the common galactic language. "Your forces have fought bravely, but this ends now. Surrender, and I will allow your people to live as slaves. Refuse, and I will turn your worlds to ash." Admiral Kethel was about to reply when his sensor officer, a young Klaxon named Zrik, started chirping excitedly. "Admiral, sir." "New contacts. Emerging from hyperspace. Reinforcements?" Admiral Kethel felt his heart skip a beat. "How many ships?" "Sensors show." "I don't understand, sir. The energy patterns are very strange. Very primitive. But there are many of them. On every ship in both fleets, sensors began detecting the same thing. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear as ships dropped out of hyperspace. But these ships were not arriving like any military force had ever arrived before. Coalition ships always emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, ready to fight. Zephyrian ships did the same, their neural links keeping them organized even during the chaos of faster-than-light travel. But these new ships appeared scattered across a huge area of space, with no pattern or organization that anyone could see. "Sir?" Commander Zrix buzzed in confusion. "The new ships are spread across 10 times the area that proper military formation requires. They appear to be random." Admiral Kethel studied his sensors. 1,200 ships had just arrived, but they were scattered like seeds thrown by the wind. Some were clustered together in small groups. Others flew alone. A few seemed to be flying in the wrong direction entirely. What kind of military commander allows his fleet to arrive in such disorder? Wondered Admiral Kethel. He was about to find out on the other side of the battle. Fleet Admiral Skylax was staring at his own sensors with a mixture of amusement and disgust. The Zephyrian commander was a reptile the size of a small building, with scales that could stop bullets and teeth like swords. He had been fighting wars since before most species learned to use fire. "What is this mess?" Skylax hissed to his second in command. "Are these ships piloted by children?" "Unknown, Admiral," replied his tactical officer. "The energy signatures match no known technology. The ships appear to be crude, primitive. Many seem to be converted civilian vessels." Scalax laughed, a sound like grinding stone. "The Coalition has grown so desperate, they ask babies to help them fight. This will be easier than I expected. Signal all ships to prepare for." He stopped talking as one of the primitive ships did something impossible. It accelerated directly toward the largest Zephyrian battleship, while broadcasting some kind of noise at maximum volume. The sound was like nothing any Zephyrian had ever heard. Wild, chaotic music with a heavy beat that made their scales. "Itch, what is that noise?" Scalax demanded. "We believe it is some form of primitive art, Admiral. What humans call rock music. Humans?" Scalax had heard that word before. His intelligence officers had mentioned them in reports. A young race from the Outer Rim, barely capable of leaving their own star system. These are the reinforcements the Coalition was expecting? "It appears so, Admiral." Scalax laughed again. "This war is over. Signal all ships to—" The human ship playing the loud music suddenly changed course at the last second, firing every weapon it had as it swept past the Zephyrian battleship. The battleship's shields held, but the unexpected attack caught them. Completely off guard. "Sir," his tactical officer called out, "the primitive ship is still accelerating. It appears to be." "Singing?" Indeed, over the communications channel, they could hear a human voice singing along with the music. "Born to be wild. Born to be wild." Captain Jake Sullivan was having the time of his life. The Liberty Bell was not the fastest ship in the human fleet, but it was loud, and Jake believed that psychological warfare was just as important as actual warfare. "Kelly, are you getting this recorded?" He called to his communications officer. Lieutenant Kelly Barnes was grinning as she worked her. "Equipment." "Every second, sir. Should I send copies to the alien fleets?" "Absolutely. I want everyone to know that humans have arrived." Jake's ship was leading a group of converted cargo haulers in what he called a cavalry charge, a straight-line attack on the enemy rear guard. It was not tactically sound by any military standard, but it was definitely getting attention. Behind them, other human ships were doing equally strange things. Captain Tony Martinez, flying his converted garbage hauler, had decided to attack the enemy fleet by flying in a spiral pattern while firing randomly in all directions. Dr. Amy Rodriguez was using her science ship to scan enemy vessels while simultaneously shooting at them. Captain Lisa Park was flying her tiny shuttle in and out of asteroid debris, using the rocks as cover while taking potshots at passing enemy ships. To the Coalition forces, it looked like chaos. To the Zephyrians, it looked like madness. But to the humans, it was just another day of making things up as they went along. "Sir," Commander Rix reported to Admiral Kethel, "the humans appear to be—" "I do not have words for what they are doing." Admiral Kethel watched his screen in amazement. The human ships were not following any battle plan he recognized. They were not even following basic physics in some cases, using gravity and momentum in ways that should have been impossible. "Are they winning?" he asked. Commander Rix checked her instruments. "The Zephyrian formation is ... confused, sir. They keep trying to respond to human attacks, but every time they adjust their position, the humans do something different." "Different how?" "Well, sir, 3 human ships just used their own cargo containers as guided missiles. Another group turned off all their systems and are pretending to be space debris. And one captain appears to be ramming enemy ships with his cargo bay doors open, using them as giant clubs." Admiral Kethel felt something he had not experienced in 3 years of war. He felt like laughing. On the Zephyrian flagship, Fleet Admiral Skylax was not laughing. He was trying to understand how 1,200 primitive ships were causing chaos among his perfectly organized fleet. "Status report," he roared. "Sir, the enemy is ... unpredictable. Every time we adapt our formation to counter their attacks, they change tactics. We have identified 47 different fighting styles among their ships, and none of them match any known military doctrine. Then destroy them." "We are trying, sir, but they refuse to fight properly. Some ships are using civilian mining equipment as weapons. Others are broadcasting noise that interferes with our neural links. One group appears to be throwing metal containers at our ships. Skylax stared at his tactical display. His fleet was 3 times larger than the human force, with weapons far superior to anything the primitives possessed. But somehow, impossibly, the humans were not losing. They were winning. The Zephyrians had studied warfare for thousands of years. They knew how every civilized race fought. The Altarians always used careful planning and smart tactics. The Drakmari charged straight ahead with overwhelming force. The Klaxons worked together like a hive mind. Every species had patterns, traditions, ways of thinking that could be predicted and countered. The humans had no patterns at all. Fleet. Admiral Scalax watched his tactical display with growing confusion as is perfect. Battle formation crumbled into chaos. His ships kept trying to respond to human attacks, but every time they moved to counter one threat, 3 new threats appeared from completely unexpected directions. "Report!" He roared at his tactical officer. "Sir, the primitive ships are—" "I do not understand what they are doing." Group 7 just launched all of their cargo containers at our cruiser squadron. The containers appear to be filled with metal debris and nuclear explosives. Destroy the containers. We tried, sir. When we shot them, they exploded and created a debris field that our ships cannot pass through. Meanwhile, 3 other human groups attacked our flanks while we were distracted. Scalax's scales turned a darker shade of red, which meant he was getting angry. These humans fight like animals. They have no discipline, no organization, no honor. Yes, sir, his officer agreed. But they are winning. Captain Jake Sullivan was indeed winning, and he was enjoying every second of it. The Liberty Belle had just completed what he called the craziest maneuver in the history of space combat, using a gravity slingshot around a destroyed Zephyrian ship to accelerate to impossible speeds before ramming straight through an enemy formation. "Jake, you magnificent crazy human," came a voice over the radio. It was Captain Tony Martinez in his garbage hauler. "That was either brilliant or completely insane. Why can't it be both?" Jake replied, "Already planning his next impossible attack. Tony, you see that big Zephyrian battleship over there? The one that looks like it's covered in spikes? The one that's 3 times bigger than my entire ship? Yeah, I see it. Want to help me steal it?" There was a pause. Then Tony started laughing. "Jake, I've been hauling garbage for 15 years. This is the most fun I've ever had. Let's steal us a battleship." What happened next would be talked about in military academies for centuries to come, though no instructor would ever recommend trying it. Jake and Tony, flying ships designed to carry cargo, somehow managed to disable a Zephyrian battleship using nothing but mining equipment, nuclear waste containers, and what Jake called creative use of physics. Meanwhile, Dr. Amy Rodriguez was having her own breakthrough aboard the Darwin's Dream. While other human ships were busy confusing the enemy with random attacks, Amy was studying the Zephyrian response patterns with scientific precision. "Martin, look at this," she called to her assistant. "Every time we do something unexpected, their neural link system takes exactly 2.3 seconds to process the new information and adapt." Dr. Martin Cross studied the data flowing across their screens. "That's not very long, Amy." "It's long enough," Amy said with excitement. "Watch this." She opened a channel to the human fleet. "All ships, this is Dr. Rodriguez. I need everyone to change tactics every 2 seconds for the next 5 minutes. "Change tactics how?" came Captain Jake's voice over the radio. "Any way you want. Just don't do the same thing twice in a row. Keep the enemy guessing." What followed was the most chaotic 5 minutes in the history of galactic warfare. Human ships switched between dozens of different fighting styles faster than the Zephyrian neural network could process. 1 second a ship would be attacking like an ancient Earth fighter plane. The next, it would be fighting like a submarine. And like a tank. And like something completely made up. Captain Lessa Park, flying her tiny shuttle, the underdog, discovered something even more important during this chaos. All human ships. This is Lisa. I think I figured out why we're winning. The Zephyrians aren't just confused by our tactics. They're terrified of them. Terrified? Came several voices at once. Look at their formation. Every time we do something new, they overreact. They're so used to being able to predict everything that facing something unpredictable is like their worst nightmare come true. She was right. The Zephyrian fleet, which had conquered half the galaxy through perfect coordination, was falling apart because they could not understand how to fight an enemy that made no sense. On the Coalition flagship, Admiral Kethal was watching the battle with amazement. His tactical officers were trying to keep track of what the humans were doing, but it was impossible. "Sir," reported Commander Zrix, "the humans appear to have divided their fleet into, I count 47 different groups, each using completely different tactics. Some are fighting like pirates. Others are using scientific equipment as weapons. One group appears to be fighting like they learned from entertainment programs." Entertainment programs? Yes, sir. They keep shouting things like, "Eat laser," "Space lizard," and "This is for Earth," while performing maneuvers that should be impossible. Admiral Kethel studied the battle display. The human ships were like a swarm of insects attacking a giant beast. Individually, they were tiny and weak. Together, they were driving the mighty Zephyrian fleet into complete disorder. "Commander, signal all Coalition ships. We attack now, while the enemy is confused." "Sir, are you sure? If we join the battle, we might hit the human ships by accident. They are flying so randomly that we cannot predict where they will be." Admiral Kethel smiled. "Then we will have to be as unpredictable as they are. All ships abandon standard battle formations. Every captain is free to choose their own targets and attack methods. Follow the human example. Make it up as you go." For the first time in 3 years, Coalition ships began fighting with creativity instead of just following orders. Altarian cruisers started using hit-and-run tactics they had not tried since their ancestors fought with wooden ships. Drakmari warriors began singing ancient battle songs while charging enemy positions. Even the calm ethereals started pulling tricks that they had learned from smugglers and pirates. The effect on the Zephyrian fleet was devastating. Already confused by the human tactics, they now faced an entire coalition that had suddenly become unpredictable. Their neural link system, designed to coordinate responses to organized attacks, simply could not handle the chaos. Sergeant Tony Martinez, still flying his garbage hauler, found himself in the middle of the biggest space battle in galactic history, and he was having the time of his life. His ship was not built for combat, but it was tough and maneuverable, and Tony had learned to use its industrial equipment in ways the designers never imagined. "Hey, Jake," he called over the radio. "Remember how you wanted to steal that battleship?" "Yeah, but it exploded 10 minutes ago," Jake replied. "Why?" "Well, there's an even bigger one over here, and I think I figured out how to break into it." "Tony, please tell me you're not about to do something incredibly stupid." "Okay, I won't tell you that." What Tony did next would become known as the Garbage Ship Gambit. Using his ship's waste disposal system, he created a cloud of metallic debris that confused the battleship's sensors. Then he used his cargo grappling arms to physically attach his tiny ship to the huge Zephyrian vessel and started cutting through the hull with industrial cutting tools. "This is either the bravest thing I've ever seen or the dumbest," commented Dr. Amy Rodriguez as she watched Tony's ship literally bite into the enemy battleship like a parasite. "With humans, it's usually both," replied Admiral Kethel, who had been listening to the human communications with fascination. 5 minutes later, Tony had somehow managed to disable the battleship's main weapons by cutting through critical power cables from the inside. His tiny garbage hauler had taken down a ship that could have destroyed an entire planet. "Tony, how did you know that would work?" asked Captain Jake. "I didn't," Tony replied cheerfully. "I just figured that all ships need power cables, and I know how to cut cables. Sometimes the simple solution is the best solution." Fleet Admiral Scalax could not believe what he was seeing. His magnificent fleet, which had never been defeated, was being torn apart by a collection of primitive ships that seemed to be making up their tactics as they went along. Even worse, their chaos was spreading to the coalition forces, who were now fighting just as unpredictably. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we have lost 30% of our fleet. The neural link system cannot process the random attacks. Every time we try to adapt, the enemy does something different." "Then stop trying to adapt," Scalax roared. "All ships, attack formation Alpha 7. Destroy everything that moves." But it was too late. The Zephyrian fleet had spent so much time trying to respond to chaos that they had forgotten how to create order. When they tried to return to their standard attack formation, they found that their perfect coordination was gone. Captain Jake Sullivan, still flying the Liberty Bell through impossible maneuvers, opened a channel to the entire battle zone. "Attention all Zephyrian ships," he announced in his most cheerful voice. "This is Captain Jake Sullivan of the human fleet. We've been fighting you for about 15 minutes now, and we've figured something out. You guys are really good at fighting when you know what's coming, but you're terrible at fighting when you don't." Fleet Admiral Skylax stared at his tactical display in disbelief. In 17 minutes, his perfect fleet had gone from certain victory to complete chaos. Ships that had conquered 47 star systems were now fleeing from converted garbage. Haulers and mining vessels. The mighty Zephyrian war machine, unstoppable for 3 years, was falling apart because of creatures that had barely learned to leave their own planet. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice shaking with confusion, "Battle Group 7 is requesting permission to retreat. Battle Group 12 has lost all coordination, and Sir... 3 of our dreadnoughts have surrendered to a single human cargo ship." "How is that possible?" Scalax demanded. "The human captain told them his ship was carrying a planet-killer bomb and would detonate it unless they surrendered. Our commanders believed him. Was he lying?" "Yes, sir. His ship was carrying farm equipment and frozen food." Scalax felt something he had never experienced in 50 years of warfare: complete helplessness. His enemy was not just defeating him through superior force or clever tactics. They were defeating him by being impossible to understand. Captain Jake Sullivan was still broadcasting to the Zephyrian fleet, his cheerful voice cutting through the chaos of battle like a knife through paper. "Come on, guys. What's it going to be? We've got about 50 more crazy ideas we haven't tried yet. There's this thing called ram them with a space station that sounds like fun." "He cannot be serious," muttered Scalax. "Sir, his communications." Officer reported, "Long-range sensors detect a large human structure approaching at high speed. It appears to be... their space station, sir, with engines attached and nuclear weapons." Scalax closed his eyes. These humans were not just unpredictable, they were completely insane. And somehow, that insanity was working. "Signal all ships," he said quietly. "Prepare to withdraw." "Sir?" His tactical officer could not believe what he was hearing. "You heard me. We retreat. Now." But it was too late for an organized retreat. The human tactics had spread confusion through the entire Zephyrian fleet. Ships tried to withdraw in different directions, running into each other and creating more chaos. Some captains, terrified of what impossible thing the humans might do next, simply shut down their engines and sent surrender messages. Captain Tony Martinez watched from his garbage hauler as 3 more Zephyrian battleships surrendered to him. "Jake," he called over the radio, "I think we broke them." "What do you mean broke them?" Jake replied while using his cargo ship to push a disabled enemy vessel out of the way. "I mean they're surrendering faster than I can accept their surrenders. I've got 17 ships trying to give up to me right now, and I don't have enough crew to take them prisoner." Dr. Amy Rodriguez was recording everything from her science ship. As a physicist, she understood exactly what had happened to the enemy fleet. "All human ships. This is Dr. Rodriguez. The Zephyrian neural link system has collapsed completely. They literally cannot coordinate their fleet anymore. Their own technology has become their weakness. How is that possible?" asked Captain Lisa Park. "Think of it like this," Amy explained while dodging debris from an exploded enemy ship. "Imagine you have a computer program designed to solve math problems. It works perfectly as long as you give it real numbers. But if you start feeding it impossible equations and random symbols, it crashes. That's what we did to their fleet coordination system." Admiral Keffel was watching the battle from his flagship with amazement that bordered on shock. In 3 years of war, he had never seen anything like this. The mighty Zephyrian fleet was not just losing, it was disintegrating. "Commander Zrix," he said to his tactical officer, "how many Zephyrian ships are still fighting?" The bug-like klaxon checked her instruments. "Approximately 12,000, sir. The rest have either surrendered, retreated, or are dead in space." "And casualties?" "On our side? Coalition losses are minimal, sir. The humans lost. Let me check ... 43 ships." Admiral Kethel did the math in his head. 1,200 human ships had destroyed or captured 38,000 enemy vessels while losing only 43 of their own. It was not just a victory. It was the most one-sided battle in galactic history. "Sir," Commander Zrix continued, "we are receiving surrender requests from Zephyrian commanders across the entire battle zone. Many are specifically asking to surrender to human captains rather than coalition forces. Why? They say the humans are too unpredictable to fight against. They would rather surrender to an enemy they cannot understand than continue a battle they cannot win." On his converted mining ship, Captain Jake Sullivan found himself accepting the surrender of not just ships, but entire enemy fleets. Zephyrian admirals who had terrorized the galaxy for years were begging him to accept their defeat. "This is Admiral Vekvel of the 7th Zephyrian Battle Fleet," came a transmission from one of the largest enemy ships. "I formally surrender my entire command to you, human captain. Please tell me what impossible thing you want us to do so we can prepare for it." Jake scratched his head. He had been a cargo pilot yesterday and was now accepting the surrender of alien admirals. Just turn off your weapons and sit still, I guess? And maybe don't try anything sneaky?" "We would not dare attempt anything sneaky against humans," Admiral Vekval replied seriously. "Your species is too dangerous to deceive." Jake looked around his small bridge at his crew of former cargo handlers and laughed. Did he just call use dangerous? Lieutenant Kelly Barnes was grinning as she recorded the surrenders. "Jake, I think we accidentally became the scariest military force in the galaxy." The battle officially ended when Fleet Admiral Scalax himself broadcast a fleet-wide surrender order. His voice carried across the entire star system, reaching every ship in both fleets. "All Zephyrian forces, this is Fleet Admiral Skylax. By my authority as Supreme Commander of the Zephyrian military, I order all ships to cease hostilities immediately and surrender to the coalition forces." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a mixture of respect and fear. "To the human commanders, your species fights in ways that defy all logic and military science. You have defeated us not through superior numbers or technology, but through pure, weaponized chaos. We surrender not just this battle, but acknowledge that any future conflict with humanity would be futile. Captain Jake Sullivan opened a channel. To reply, "Thanks, Admiral. That's really nice of you to say. For what it's worth, you guys fight pretty good when you're organized. Maybe too organized, if you know what I mean." News of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On every world, in every star system, beings who had lived in fear of the Zephyrian Empire suddenly learned that the unstoppable conquerors had been stopped by a species that most had never heard of. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating for the Zephyrian Empire. Commanders who had never lost a battle began surrendering entire sectors without fighting. Planets that had been conquered rose in rebellion. The empire that had seemed invincible crumbled in weeks. Dr. Amy Rodriguez spent the journey home writing her report on what had happened. As a scientist, she wanted to understand why humanity had succeeded where every other race had failed. The key, she wrote, was not that humans are better fighters than other species. We are not stronger, faster, or smarter than our galactic neighbors. What makes us different is that we never learned how war was supposed to be fought. Every other species in the galaxy has thousands of years of military tradition. They have rules, patterns, and proper procedures. These traditions made them predictable. The Zephyrians studied these patterns and learned to counter them perfectly. But humans had no military space combat traditions because we had never fought in space before. We had to make everything up as we went along. This forced improvisation was our greatest weapon because it made us impossible to predict or counter. When the human fleet returned to Earth, they found a planet that had changed forever. Humanity had left as an unknown species on the edge of galactic civilization. They returned as the race that had saved the galaxy from its greatest threat. President Lyndon Morrison addressed the world from the United Nations building. 6 months ago, we learned we were not alone in the universe. Today, we learned that sometimes being different is more important than being powerful. She looked directly at the camera, speaking to every human on Earth and every alien race across the galaxy. We went to space to help our neighbors and discovered something important about ourselves. Humans work best when the situation is impossible, when the odds are hopeless, and when everyone else says it cannot be done. That is when we become most human. The galaxy now knows what Earth has always known. Never underestimate someone who has nothing to lose and no idea what they're doing. Captain Jake Sullivan returned to flying cargo ships, but now his roots took him across the galaxy. Alien races hired human pilots not because their ships were better, but because human unpredictability had become a valuable commodity. Pirates and raiders learned to avoid any ship with a human crew, not because humans were the best fighters, but because they might try anything. In military academies across the galaxy, a new course was added to the curriculum: human tactical philosophy. The first lesson was always the same warning: